just looking at this year, just one of the themes that struck me about this year, the ubiquity of digital. Digital is now, I think, in every single campaign. When I went through the 160 case histories from 1996, digital actually only came in 2006. That was the first mention that I really spotted. And guess what it was? There were 2 award-winning papers in 2006. Both used digital, and what were they using? Bebo. Where is Bebo? That shows you how fast things are moving on the digital. But this year it was everywhere, and it was fully integrated. There was no digital campaign. There were campaigns which had a digital element, in the way that there were campaigns which had a TV element and maybe a PR element. So it's a channel. It's a method of communication, but it's integrated, and the best campaigns integrated with others. The erosion of trust, you can see in a lot of the campaigns, Liberty being one, how people had to get trust back. And this is just a reflection of what was happening in Ireland with the financial collapse and the recession. That trust in government, trust in big institutions, trust in financial institutions, trust in big companies, trust in the church was at a low ebb. So one of the things that people went to, that a lot of campaigns went to, is what can I trust in a world where everybody has collapsed and everything I knew has collapsed? We go back to our roots, the farmer. The number of times companies used farmers is quite phenomenal. Sometimes half-naked farmers, which I thought was going a little bit too far. Anybody here involved in the Bachelor's campaign? I really, do you fancy a bit on the side? It was a little bit too bloody obvious. But anyway, they were using farmers. One of those farmers was called John Fanning, by the way, but that's a minor piece of information. But it was quite interesting. There's a Danish expression. The Danes got into terrible trouble in the 19th century. They lost, I think they owned Denmark, or they owned Norway, or they owned Finland up to then, but they lost it all. And they came up with a phrase which is it's a standard line in Denmark that will often be quoted. What we lost without, we must find within. And I think that's what we did. What we lost without, we went back to our roots, which is farmers. The sound of heavy metal, that metal being the Irish word for the cooperation, and everybody helping each other out in the community. There were a number of campaigns. The Gathering was obviously the most spectacular example, but there were others that traded on that kind of an idea. The Electric Ireland Kindness campaign, and there was a Guinness campaign to vote for social projects. So that was a feature that wouldn't have happened before. The absence of FMCG, I really feel bad about that. Not many FMCG brands. Those dirty retailers have a lot to answer for, really. Lolo is probably the best example. I thought it was the best example of an FMCG brand this year. I thought it was a very good campaign, and it shows that it can be done. So if you're representing anybody from a fast-moving consumer goods company, just look at that Lolo campaign and see what can be done, because it's not all over. And of course, the presence of retailers, then you've got not just McDonald's, but Super Value in particular. Highly, one of the things that manufacturers were able to do before a couple of years ago is they could at least say, well, we make decent advertising campaigns instead of the rubbish that you see in the Sunday Independent for all those supermarkets. But now retailers are becoming more sophisticated, and their advertising campaigns, their campaigns are becoming better. I think Super Value is a good example there. So is there a successful model? Having looked at all that, is there a success that will guarantee profitability from an investment in marketing communications? No, there's not. Not a chance. There is no model that you can use. There are guidelines, but there's no guaranteed model. That means you have to work quite hard, and you've got to go back on all those case histories. But there's a few things that seem to, first of all, understanding the product, the market, and society. It's not just the market. You've got to understand, sometimes the solution will come from a deeper understanding of the product. Interrogate the product until it's whatever. The insight, we're back on insights here. Is there anybody here who has a title, their job title, with the word insight in it as a matter of interest? No, that's very good. I was going to say I'd bring it to the Labour Relations Committee if you did. I think it's mad. It is harassment of the highest order to call anybody an insight manager. Einstein had about 2 insights in his entire bloody life. I mean, you can't call anybody. It's too much pressure. It's just stupid. If we have, they say in poets, if they're blessed by the muse 5 or 6 times in their lives, they're doing well. So never call anybody an insight manager. It's not fair. And then setting targets. Yeah, that's the point I was making earlier. You have to set much more precise targets than certainly I was ever used to. You should be setting a better example there. Also, nowadays, the media needs to be brought in from the very beginning. I don't have to say that in this particular room. I'd say that people here think media should be brought in first. But I think they should all be brought in together. But certainly the idea of not discussing, discussing a plan for a campaign in the absence of having a media expert and somebody who is familiar with all the channels is crazy, because you never know where the critical insight is going to come from. One of the best examples, and if you've heard this before, sorry, but one of the best examples in my memory, and one of the most successful campaigns I worked on was Ballygowan. We had a budget of 5,000 or 6,000 somewhere back in the 1980s, and we had the media guy, the creative guys, and we were just trying, what in God's name we're going to do with this? The solution came from a media guy who said, there's a column in the Irish Times called Table for Two, written by Helen Lucy Burke. It's incredibly pretentious. Why don't we get an ad called Table Water for Two and brief a copywriter to be equally pretentious? Catherine Donnelly managed for about 2 years to be as pretentious as Helen Lucy Burke, and then she gave up. But by then, the brand was quite successful. But the solution, we would never in a million years have thought, well, our immediate reaction was radio if we only had that amount of money. But the idea came from somebody who understood media better than the creative people or the account executives or the planners. So that's why it's important to have all disciplines when you're in the planning process.